Welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. You're listening to newsstreamingnetwork.com. We are home of Going Solo and Going Bold, which we are going bold today so delightfully with the Link to Experts business and Goodreads showcase. We are connecting with all the experts here today, and we have a treat for you. So we have a wonderful guest. But before we start, I am Cece Schatz. I'm the doyenne of relationship building. I have my good friend here, Joanne Weiland. Joanne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Joanne Weiland, Weiland when you can fly. I'm the founder of Link to Expert because I feel like we all have expertise and we just have to let the world know about ourselves so that we can continue to be grow and learn and actually grow and learn from each other because nobody knows everything and most people know different things. So we all learn from each other. That's one of the reasons we started the show. And this one with the Author's Corner is even more exciting because people like Matt DiMaio, who we're going to be introducing in a second, they not only are experts at it, but they actually teach us how to learn what they learned either in their books or on YouTube, like Matt does, or like all different interviews and stuff like this, as well as other products and services that he has that we'll be talking about. So we just love sharing each other's expertise with each other. So thanks
Yes,
for
it's so
joining
much
us.
fun. So much fun. Okay, those of you out there that are watching us, please forgive us because we are going through a tremendous storm here, lightning and thunder and all of that, and it's creating our internet to go a bit wonky. But we are live, and so we just have to roll with it like we always do. So our author today, and I love our authors because they are so creative and so inspiring, and we have a terrific author here with us today, Matt DiMaio. Let's bring him right up to stage. Hey, Matt.
Hello, Cece. Hello, Joanne. Hey, everybody
Hi.
out there.
It is great having you on here. Absolutely. Now, you've written a couple books. We're going to kind of feature one book. Maybe we can twist your arm, have you come back on for the second book, but we will share that briefly here on them on the show today. We're going to talk about our actually topic today is give yourself an unfair advantage, the best social skill you can possess. Um, yeah, it's just unfair. I mean, we're going to talk about that. What the heck is unfair? But we're going to get on to that. But before we do, let's talk about just briefly his book. You guys can purchase it right on Amazon, and I believe maybe his website. We'll have to ask him that. How to remember people's names. I mean, how many people have trouble with that? Raise your hand. I'm double raising. So yeah. So this is terrific. So let's go right on and ask you, Matt, what the heck with this title? Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know why you are so creative in writing these books that help people because it is tremendous. You are an author, speaker, and you're a rapid learning specialist. And we want to thank you so much for being on the show here with us today. So let's talk a little bit about you. How'd you get started in being this wonderful #1 best-selling author? How'd you get started in that?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Cece and Joanne. I'm very, very happy to be here. And, you know, I got started in teaching people how to learn things faster way back when I was running a chain of computer programming schools in New Jersey. So I'm going to take you back to the year 1979, before people had computers in their homes. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't be until August of 1981 that IBM would release their first home computer, their first PC. So this is 2 years before that. And I was helping young people that were looking to change careers enter a career training school where we were teaching business-related computer programming skills. Many of these were young adults that had been a while since they had been in school, and they decided that they wanted to learn this new skill. Because at that time, as funny as it is to say now, the buzz was that computers were going to be this hot thing. And the world, by the way, was operating on punch cards. For some of the viewers that are old enough to remember them, you used to get them in your bill. Anyway, I discovered that many of my students really struggled. And my income as the head of admissions for the schools was based on collected tuitions. So when students would drop out, it affected my paycheck. I actually received what's called a chargeback, where they would actually take money out of my check. And so I was financially motivated to not only solve my school's dropout problem, but also I had it within me that I really wanted to be able to help these young people succeed. So I began to research everything I could find on what made somebody a good student. Now, me, myself, God blessed me with some good brains, and I was able to cruise through school until I got to college. I finished 2 years at Villanova University and really was starting to get lost. I didn't have good study skills. I was a lazy student, and I decided to drop out to go become a professional musician, which I eventually did. But I couldn't use any of my own experiences as a role model. So I began to research what makes somebody a good student, and I was shocked at how much information I found that was out there. So I began to teach a 90-minute class called What School Never Taught You About Learning, where I would talk about how do you focus and how do you pay attention? Because teachers and parents would wag their finger at you and say things like, listen to me when I talk to you, pay attention, stop daydreaming. And almost nobody's ever taken a single class on how to do that. Take notes, study for the test. Well, they tell you to do it, but you don't have any methodology. So I was shocked when I found all this stuff out, that there was really good strategies out there, and I began to teach it. Now, two things happened. Number one, I reduced the dropout rate, which was fantastic. But much more importantly, I increased the job placement rate, because when these young people would go on a job interview, they actually knew what they were talking about. Go figure. But that's when the magic happened. You see, I began to get calls from the companies that hired our graduates, wondering what we were doing at our school that made our students perform so much better than students from competing schools, or even students that they had hired from my school in the past. And the students had this wacky nickname for me. They called me Matt the Memory Man, which at the beginning I kind of liked, but then I realized it was an impossible moniker to live up to. And I began to get calls to come and do training and speaking engagements for data processing executives. So the DPMA, the Data Processing Management Association, and the ASM, the Association of Systems Managers, were the first two national organizations that regularly had me in to speak at their monthly dinner meetings. And so I was like the after dinner entertainer. I would meet everybody at the cocktail hour. The professionals would have their business meeting. They'd serve their dinner, and during dessert, they'd bring me up. And I would do an after dinner show where I memorized a deck of playing cards and they'd quiz me on it. Or I handed out 30 copies of the same issue of Time magazine, and they would call up, hey, what's the article on page 123? Well, where's the advertisement for this car company? And I closed every show by doing a demonstration. And I would say, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making me feel so very welcome here tonight. As I call off your name, please stand up. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. And I'd go around the room, call everybody by name. They'd all be standing, so I always got a standing ovation. And then I would sell tickets to my weekend memory training seminars. But being able to call everybody in the room by name was like a Martian landed in the room, because this was something that nobody else could do. And that's how I got started way back at the beginning of 1980. Yes, I'm really that old. I turned 72 this past March. So I've been doing this a long time.
That's amazing, because that is one of the hardest things, is to remember people's names. I tend to do it by trying to remember the first letter. I don't know if that's anything about it, but I usually can bring it up because I remember the first letter of their name, and then I can bring up their name. So that's my little trigger for memory. But yeah, but fantastic.
Well, I can make you a promise, and also all of your viewers and listeners. And that is, we're not going to just talk about improvement. I'm not just going to help you get a little bit better. If you pay attention to what we're going to cover today, I'm going to help you go through a breakthrough where your level will, we're not talking about going from 30 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour. We're talking about going from 30 miles an hour to warp speed, to breaking the sound barrier. And I want you to hold me to that promise.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's terrific, because a lot of us, like say, I know you mentioned your age. I'm not going to mention my age, but we are in the, getting a little bit more mature here. And, that is one of the things we do worry about. We worry about our memory, because as we get older, we do seem to have a problem with our memory. And my mom used to say, maybe they think this is funny, but my mom used to say, don't remember what you can't look up. So she always, because she said her philosophy is that you don't have much mind space, so don't fill it with a bunch of empty stuff. If you can look it up, don't worry about it. That's what she thought, but I don't know if that makes sense or not. But anyhow,
well, Albert Einstein actually shared that philosophy. One time, Albert Einstein was being interviewed, and one of the press people from the press asked him a simple question. And he said, excuse me a moment, went over, got out a book, looked up the answer, came back, told him the answer. And the people in the press were shocked. And they said, well, wait a minute, you're like supposed to be the smartest man in the world. Why'd you have to look that up? He said, because I put in my head those things that are important to me. I'm not going to clog myself up with stuff that I can easily research. So your mom had something very important in common with the great Albert Einstein.
Well, there you go. My mom was pretty cool. So yeah, she was really special. But then again, I guess you got to remember which book to look it up, right? So, so that would be important. But yeah, you're amazing. I mean, I love this. So let's talk a little bit about this topic today. We're saying unfair advantage. Why would we say that it's unfair?
Well, I'm glad that you asked, because I talk about giving yourself an unfair advantage. And here's what I mean by that. You want in life, you want to have every competitive advantage to help you do your very best. And having an unfair advantage is being able to do something that other people are either unwilling or unable to do. And Cece, you mentioned earlier that a lot of times people kind of talk themselves down, and they talk about how bad they are at remembering people's names. And we all know that it's important. And I'll talk about just all of the reasons why it's important, things that you may not have considered before. But we know that it's important, and yet most people suffer blindly with the pain of being terrible at it, rather than taking the time to do something about it. And so today, we're going to talk about very specific steps that you can take that'll work instantly to give you improvement. And then we'll also talk about some stuff that'll take you through breakthrough.
Yeah, so let's get started on that. So what would you suggest? Where should we start?
Well, I talk about being able to remember a room full of people's names is as close of a skill that you can have to being a real life superpower. And so when I talk about being able to remember a room full of people's names, I had sent you and Joanne and those people that come to my YouTube channel, Be Smarter, Faster. You'll see videos of me in front of very large audiences that I will meet before I'm introduced on stage. And then during my talk, one of the first things that I do is to go around the room and call everybody that I've met by name. And so we're talking about dozens and dozens of people, 50, 80, 100. So some of the audiences that I've spoken to are pretty significant. And so you'll see what I mean. When somebody's able to do that, a couple of things happen. Number one, when we talk about that, being able to remember names gives you a competitive advantage. Number one, it gives you a level of self-confidence that is really hard to achieve any other way. Also, other people will regard you with a level of respect and admiration that goes far beyond what normal people are able to enjoy.
Mhm.
It allows you to be very influential, much more persuasive. And the bottom line is that it helps you make more money. It allows you to enjoy more success. And all because you're able to remember people's names. So I have a story to help illustrate this point. So years ago, I was just breaking into, I was in my 30s, and I was just going to break into being a consultant. And I attended a hotel seminar in Clifton, New Jersey, next to where I grew up. I'm originally from North Jersey. I bet you couldn't tell, huh? Hey, how you doing? And so, but I live here in Tampa, Florida now.
Mhm.
But so I attended this seminar, and I was one of the last people to arrive in the room. And everybody else that was in the room were senior citizens, a bunch of gray-haired guys, kind of like my age now, and they were all retired executives from AT&T and Bell Laboratories and Hoffman LaRoche and Ford Motor Company and on and on. Well, I was easily the youngest person in the room. The instructor in the front of the room had everybody get up and introduce themselves, and at the same time, he was passing around a clipboard for people to sign in so that he knew who everybody was and he could take attendance. So I watched where the clipboard went down one row, up the next, down back down the next, and up the next. And it ended with me. I was the last person in the room, and I had the clipboard. And so after everybody else had a chance to introduce themselves, the instructor got around to me. And here I am. I stood up and I said, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt DiMaio, and I teach people how to learn things fast. And you could see these older professional people kind of snickering at me under their breath, a little derisive laughter, like, who the heck is this kid, to learn things fast? And so I said, I know that it may be a little hard to understand the concept, so let me show you what I mean. And with that, I went around the room and called every single person in the room by name. But I had never met them. I had never shaken their hand or introduced myself. What I did was I simply memorized their names as they introduced themselves and looked at the clipboard to see where they were sitting. And I went down one row and up the other. You could have heard a pin drop. Nobody was laughing at me anymore after I did that. Well, after the seminar was over, the guy who was running the class grabbed me on the side and said, young man, the owner of my company would love to meet a guy like you. And with that, I wound up getting one of the most lucrative speaking engagement contracts. It was a long-term contract where I literally traveled around the country doing the same training he was doing, in spite of only having been with the company 4 or 5 days. I was able to learn all of the speech that fast. So it gave me a national platform. The company was paying for me to travel all over the place. And I would do that with all of the attendees at every seminar I had, because when they walked in the room, they were all skeptical, looking at me like, what's this kid going to teach me? And I would do the thing, they would introduce themselves. After they were done, I'd say, I can do something that you can't. I have the ability to learn things really fast. They would laugh at me. And then I would go around the room, call everybody by name, but I also talked about what their specialty was, where they were from, any other personal information that they shared during their introduction. And for the rest of the seminar, they were eating out of my hand. I always had the highest resource sales in the back of the room of any speaker that this company had, and they were in business for years before me. And so when I talk about the fact that remembering large numbers of people's names is like having a superpower, I mean it quite literally. Imagine yourself being able to go to any barbecue, any birthday or graduation party, any wedding reception, any networking event, or any chamber of commerce meeting, or any large group of people. Imagine being able to meet a bunch of people and then being able to remember all their names.
I mean, that's
Wow.
amazing, because I remember I worked for an attorney one time, and just a delightful man, wonderful man, and rest his soul. But he couldn't remember anybody's names, and so he would always, shake their hand or whatever, and then he'd lean to me, and I'd say what their name was, and it was so funny because he could not, for the life of him, remember. And so it just took the pressure off of him, that I was able to, but I had that contact with them. I was able to talk with them on, on a daily basis, a weekly basis. So of course I knew them a little bit more. But
some professions, it's more important than others. You're talking about being an attorney, but politicians, being able to remember people's names translates directly to votes. You don't remember people's names, you blur into obscurity. If you're a pastor, a minister, a rabbi, a priest, and you can recall the names of the members of your congregation, that translates in a one-to-one correlation to collections in the plate. So there are, if you're in sales and you can remember the name of the receptionist or their kids or the people that you're making presentations to, not just their names, but the names of their pets, the names of their family members, I think gives you a level of credibility.
I'm going to have to interrupt you here for just a minute, but what that does is that really connects people. People really feel that they're special. They feel like they're one. They've got that true blessing of connection with you when you remember who they are. You remember their pets' names. You remember something about them, and that gives them a really warm feeling. And so, of course, whatever profession in that definitely goes with that. When we come back, we're going to take a break, and so when we come back, let's talk a little bit about tips that we can give those individuals. Now, I know that we want them to be able to take your course that you have, and but you are a rapid learning specialist, and so but let's give them a little flavor. Let's give them a little bit that they can go with to see if there's something that they want to entertain, because I do think it's important that we have that connection with individuals. So it's very, very important that we do that. But before we do, I want to make sure everyone knows a little bit more about you. You do have a YouTube channel called Be Smarter Faster. So there's oodles. I checked it out myself. There's oodles of videos on there. So you definitely want to be able to check that out. And of course, we'd love for you to connect personally with Matt. All you have to do is you can email him at, and I'm going to spell it for you so you have it. It's MAESTRO marketing@live.com. And then you can go to his website, which is AnIncredibleMemory.com. So AnIncredibleMemory.com. So you can check him out there. So we're going to go to a quick break, only 30 seconds. So we want to make sure you guys stick around, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. That is our radio station, and we are on the new streaming network.com, home of Going Bold and Going Solo. This show is called LinktoEXPERT. We're on the Goodreads show, really highlighting our wonderful authors, and we've got a terrific author here today. I am Cece Schatz, and unfortunately, Joanne Weiland, my sidekick, I think got kicked off because we're having a tremendous storm here where we're at, the Tampa Bay area, and her internet, I think, went down very quickly. So we have a gentleman here with us. We're talking about give yourself an unfair advantage to the best social skills you possess. We have Matt DiMaio? Did I say the right name? I think I messed it up. I had it right the first time.
Matt DiMaio.
DiMaio.
It's funny, we're talking about remembering names.
I know, and here I am. I'm like, and it's right in front of me. And when I looked at the phone, I thought, wait a minute, am I saying it wrong? But yeah, so we have a wonderful author here. He's you go on Amazon, get his book, How to Remember People's Names. As you can see, I need his course. He's got a course in it and the book. So maybe I need to really do that myself. So we all have weaknesses, and I will attest to my own. But let's talk the first part of the show. If you missed it, you got to go back and listen, because he talked about a couple places that he was at, speaking engagements and whatnot, and that he could remember everybody's name, which is just remarkable. And we all would love to be able to have that connection. But he's going to share with us on this app some of the little tips so that we can take that away with us. And then maybe you might want to consider one of his courses that he has. And you can just go to his YouTube channel, get a lot of information, Be Smarter Faster on his YouTube channel. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some tips that we can give our audience today.
Absolutely. And, we all have heard this old quote: to be a success in life, it's not just what you know, it's who you know. But if you can't remember people's names, well, they say that you know them. And so what we're going to talk about now is what can you do to go from where you're at about being insecure about names, and you meet somebody and 5 minutes later you don't remember them, and what can you do about it immediately? So that's going to give you an improvement. But I promised you that I was going to help you enjoy a breakthrough. So I'm going to give you the improvement stuff first that'll work instantly with no practice. And then I'll give you the super sauce. So one of the things that people ask me about is, why can't I remember names? What is the problem? And so as a result, instead of talking about memory, I want to give all of you the 3 causes of forgettery. What causes you to forget stuff in the first place? So if you understand what's causing the problem, you're more than halfway to solving it. So the first cause of forgettery is that you don't get it. If you don't get it, you can't keep it. To forget is to not get. Just like to forego is to not go, or to not go there. Oh, I'm going to forgo that idea. No, I ain't going there. And so sometimes you're meeting people at a cocktail party or at a networking event or chamber of commerce, and somebody brings over a friend and they say, hey, I'd like you to meet my friend, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. And you go, yeah, nice to see you. How you doing, pal? If you didn't get the name, there's no way you can keep the name. If you don't get it, you can't keep it. So in step number 1, you have to get the name. That means you've got to pay attention. You've got to focus in. You've got to, when that name is going to come to you, if you've got a problem with it, a person's going to be introduced to you. Now is the time to stop thinking about all this other stuff and go, okay, I'm going to get their name. You got to get it. If you don't understand it, or they have a foreign sounding name, or a difficult, or there's a noise in the background, or you got interrupted, ask them again. If you still don't understand, ask them how they spell it. People are happy to talk to you about their names. All right, number 2, you don't care. Now, some of you are going, but Matt, I care. Well, look, there's caring, and then there's caring enough to do something about it. Somebody who is who's overweight, that's sitting on the couch, that, hey, I care that I'm overweight. Meantime, they're munching out on the fattening food sitting in front of the TV and not doing anything about it. You care, but not enough to do anything about it. Well, so I know people that can recite the names and all of the important statistics of every player on their favorite sports team, even these unusual names, and yet can't remember the people that they met at the cocktail party the night before, or they can't remember their wedding anniversary. So it's not that you don't have the ability, it's that you just don't care that much. You excuse yourself. Yeah, if I remember them, fine, and if I don't, so what? So what I'm going to teach you in a moment is a kind of a mental filing system, but you have to care enough to actually use it. So I'm going to teach you some techniques, but you have to care enough to put the techniques into action.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's 3 causes of forgettery. I told you, number 1 is you don't get it. Number 2 is you don't care. But number 3 is the real culprit. And this makes the other 2 look small by comparison. And the 3rd cause of forgettery is that you don't believe. You know what you don't believe? You don't believe that you have a super powerful memory right now. You don't believe that you can remember everybody's names when you want. Because I hear people talk. They go, oh, I can always remember a face. I can never remember a name. Oh, I'm terrible at remembering names. Oh, I must be getting old. Oh, I must be getting the Alzheimer's. Don't say those type of things to yourself, especially about the Alzheimer's. My mother passed away from that. So you don't want to continue to give yourself the wrong instructions, because if your attitude is, I can't do it anyway, and give yourself an excuse, then there's no reason to care. There's no reason to get it. So you're beating yourself before you start. But now you can't do the flip side either and say, oh, I've got a perfect memory. I remember everything now. That doesn't work either. So what do you say to yourself? When you're meeting people, say, how can I remember their name? How can I remember you? Now, let me give you an example for something that happened at the very beginning of this show. Even though Joanne is not with us right now, when Joanne introduced herself at the beginning of the show, she said, my name is Joanne Weiland. And she said, why land when you can fly? Why land?
Mm-hmm.
So she already built in to her name a memory tip. My last name is DiMaio. So you go into a delicatessen and you order a ham and cheese on rye, whole DiMaio. And so, by the way, I'm going to give you a lot more of this type of stuff, but we're going to talk about what the techniques are and how to be creative and clever. But I don't want to minimize the 3 causes of forgettery. If you get it, care, and ask yourself and believe in yourself and stop talking yourself down. Stop telling yourself all the things that you can't do and how you're no good at it, because then you won't even try. So you're literally giving yourself a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're beating yourself before you start.
Right.
Ask yourself, how can I remember that person's name? And you'll be amazed at what your creativity does for you. Now, I want to tell you a quick story just using the 3 causes of forgettery and just how powerful this is, because it's easy to dismiss it as mere theory or a bunch of hot air. So I was a longstanding member of the Tampa Bay Business Owners. And going to their meetings, one of the people at that meeting was one of Tampa Bay's most illustrious and famous professional business photographers. His first name is Rick. And Rick hadn't seen me in a while. He was away on business, shooting some events. And he saw me at the next business owners meeting. And he came running up to me and said, Matt, you won't believe it. I just did a business event. It was actually a wedding. I don't usually do weddings, but the guy that owned the company, his daughter was getting married. He hired me to shoot the wedding. And I remembered everybody in the wedding party's name. As a result, I got the biggest tip I've ever received in all my years in business. Now, I asked Rick, I said, hey, Rick, I'll bet you didn't even have to use any of the fancy techniques that I've shown you. I'll bet all you had to do was use the 3 causes of forgettery. You got the names when they were being introduced. You really cared whether you were going to remember their names or not. And you gave yourself positive reinforcement by saying to yourself, yep, I'm going to remember them. Here's how I'm going to do it. And he went, Matt, you're absolutely right. I just used the 3 causes of forgettery and it worked like magic. Folks, that's how important you being able to use the 3 causes of forgettery is. Get it, care, believe, and you will transform, you will triple your memory capabilities. But now, in a moment, I'll give you the super sauce. But before I do, CC, any feedback or questions?
Yeah, that's remarkable. And you are so right. I mean, I believe that is correct. We do have just a few minutes left. So if you want to be really quick with the super sauce, we can do that.
Absolutely. So let me give it to you in a nutshell. So number one, ask yourself, how do you remember anybody's names right now? So how do you remember people's names? So if you were to meet somebody that had the same name as your brother, your mother, your father, would you need to use any special technique? Or would you meet him and go, Mark? Oh yeah, like my brother Mark. Pat? Oh yeah, my parents' names were both Pat and Patty. So your mind automatically does the mechanics of making that connection. Some people use the word association. To me, that's a terrible word. A much better word is connection. So in a nutshell, here's where the superpower is. You're going to learn to make an image of somebody's name and learn how to connect it to them. So how do you make an image of somebody's name? Well, sometimes the name is already a picture. What is a mat? Well, like a welcome mat. I am always a welcome mat. A wrestling mat. When I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team. I was a wrestling mat. I have a buddy of mine that used to call me Matador. And back when I was single, I used to say, yes, Matador. Matador is the girls adore a mat. But there's all sorts of names that are things. You have the names of the months. You've got girls named April or June or May. You've got attitudes like faith and hope and charity. You've got jewelry like a pearl or sapphire or ruby. So sometimes the names already mean things. Sometimes you already know somebody with that name, like we were talking about before, but it doesn't have to be somebody in real life. Maybe it's a character in a book or somebody from a TV show. If I meet somebody named Marge or Bart or Lisa or Homer, I might immediately think of The Simpsons. And so there are multiple ways to make images with people's names. And in my book on how to remember people's names, I give you 4 different ways on how do you make an image from names, even difficult names. For example, the woman who first created the idea of using a seeing eye dog, her last name was Eustace, Mrs. Eustace. So I created the picture. Well, here's this woman that came up with the idea of a seeing eye dog for the blind. She went up to a blind man with the dog and said, here, use this. Back when the United States was really starting to import a lot of electronics from Japan, when we normalized relationships with Japan, the prime minister of Japan was Nakasone. And so when you were importing that much electronics from Japan, you had better never knock a Sony. And so sometimes the names make themselves apparent, just like Joanne did with her name, Weiland, when you can fly. Now, there's lots more ways of doing that. But the cool part about it is that it's not only fun, but it's funny. And it's easier than you realize.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so enlightening, so much fun to have you here. And I just love it. So again, you can purchase the book on Amazon, How to Remember People's Names. And again, if you want to reach Matt, you can just go to his email, send him an email. He'd love to hear from you.
And that's pronounced, by the way, Maestro Marketing.
Right. Maestro Marketing. It's MAESTRO marketing@live.com. And then his website is An Incredible Memory. That's AN incrediblememory.com. So we want you to definitely reach out to him. We would love for you to do that. And, get the book, because I really do think it would definitely help you. And it's very, very interesting. It's funny because yesterday I was talking with a lady and she goes, oh, I'll never remember your name. And I said to her, just remember ABCC. That's it. So I did your thing, just like
that's it. You built in a memory cue for somebody. And it's like, yes, CC, senor. Really? And so in closing, here's my closing tagline. Everything I teach takes a little bit of work and effort, but it's worth it. always remember that the fastest way to get to the top is to get off your bottom. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. So everyone, please run out and get the book. Again, it's How to Remember People's Names. It's this is the long title of it. If you guys want to see it, How to Remember People's Names, simple mental tricks that will instantly enable you to stop forgetting and start remembering the names of people you meet. That is the actual title on the book. It's right there on Amazon. Again, we want to thank you, Matt, so much for being with us here today. You are a delight, a wonderful person. And I know you've written another book, so let's just briefly talk about the other book and show it to the audience. And maybe we'll have you come back and talk about that a little bit more.
Wonderful. Well, you know, we have, this is called Straight A Strategies for Successful Online Learning. You know, when people have to take classes online, or you want to take and learn things online, the experience of learning things online is completely different than sitting in a live classroom. And what I did was I compiled all of the differences and all of the strategies, because nobody talks about the differences for students in how to overcome the obstacles and the setbacks in being able to be successful with taking online classes. So I break the process down and provide very, very specific strategies to help you get straight A's.
Wow, that's amazing, because you know, in today's world, a lot of things that we're doing are online. And so we need something like that. I know a lot of our young people are doing online courses. And again, just the other day, I was talking to my girlfriend, Laura, and she wants to take a course. And she was saying how she was worried about taking an online course because she wasn't sure she'd be able to get it without someone actually being there to be able to connect with. So yeah, I'm going to share with her your book, and maybe this will help her. So I want to definitely do that. So everyone, we will have Matt come back and share that book with us, because I think it's important that we learn it. So again, Matt DiMaio is an author, speaker, and a rapid learning specialist. We want to thank you so much for being on the show. You are a delight, and you're also a neighbor of ours because you're right here in the Tampa Bay area. So we love having one of our people here with us, because we talk to people all over the world. So it is nice to have someone just down the street. So thank you so much for being on the show. We do appreciate it. So you guys, you're listening to Link to Expert Goodreads Authors Corner. My good friend Joanne Weiland wasn't able to stay on with us today because we're having a storm, and I bet she's lost her internet. I am Cece Schatz, the doyenne of relationship building. I want to thank you for listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. That's our radio station. We have the newstreamingnetwork.com. That's our TV and podcast station. We want you to check that out. We're going bold all the time, and we want to thank you so much for joining us here today. Bye for now.